Welcome to Drunken PM Radio. Jay Hrcsko's here. Jay, thank you for taking time.
Thank you for inviting me.
We're going to do an interview about how to not suck at being interviewed on a podcast in a moment. But before we do that, Jay, would you mind telling these folks who you are and what your depth of experience with the podcasting is?
Sure. So those who are adjacent to the Agile space and into Agile podcasts might hear my voice, and it might sound familiar. I was the primary host of the Agile Uprising podcast since, 2016. So this year was quote unquote 10 years. Good for us. When I look back, we did weekly episodes for 8 years consecutively. So I don't know, do the math and figure out how many episodes that was. I was probably the host on a good 90% of them. I did a lot of the orchestration behind the scenes, a lot of the mastering and whatnot. And I also, now I do some stuff off to the side, more music focused. This is where, Dave, you're going to start insulting me, but it's primarily around nu metal, but
That's insult me metal. It's just an aesthetic that I never quite got.
It's not for everybody. But I do some stuff now, a lot more with music, because it's just kind of like a blow off valve. But yeah, I've had some good interviews. I've had some bad interviews. I've had some gnarly ones. So when you reached out and said, hey, can we talk about what makes a good guest and how to prepare yourself to be on one? I said, absolutely. Because man, I got feelings.
All right, cool. Thank you. So the intention with this is, if you've never been interviewed for a podcast, we would like to help. Selfishly, we would like to help ourselves, so that if you don't know what you're doing, you don't make it a horrible experience for all of us. You're nervous. We're nervous. We're going to try to make it better. And we have an outline, an agenda, which I almost never have agendas for conversations, but we did come up with one. And the first one is preparation do's and OMFG, please don't. So, Jay, how do you like people to prepare for an interview? What do you want them to show up with and show up as?
So typically what I've always told people is, the music stuff is different because we can do that unscripted, because you can do a lot more riffing, because there's tangential topics that are easier to grab into. But so like the Agile stuff, for example, I typically tell them, give me some of the things that you want to talk about that you feel are important. So for example, our show, for those who aren't familiar, we did a lot of interviews with authors. So someone has a new book coming out, someone has a new framework or something.
New manifesto.
Yeah.
Old manifesto.
Manifesto. We try to tell them, are there notes inside that book that you specifically want to hit on that you feel are particularly resonant? Because otherwise what we're going to do is we're going to default to the things that I or my other podcast hosts think are important, which, yeah, you may kind of lose the forest for the trees there. So if you're a good guest, reach out to someone who's having you and say, hey, these are the notes I want to hit. Can we make sure to hit these if we have time? That's the first thing. The other thing is, I think some people overthink it. We've definitely had people who've had the deer in the headlights thought.
Yeah.
You can do miracles in post-production. You can do miracles.
But that can make it painful for you, though. If to your point, yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. It gets to a point where eventually you just tell people, dirty secret, you tell people you'll fix it in post, and then you just put it live and whatever. Yeah. Nobody notices anyway. But truthfully, you're going to want to tell the person who's interviewing what your notes are. What are the big things you want to hit? Realistically, a good interviewer will share some type of forethought to say, hey, we are going to script this, and here are the things I want to talk about. I will say there are a couple of times I've done interviews where people, not an obscure topic, but something which is kind of in the weeds. And if you send them a list, you say, look, here's all the bullet points that I picked out that I think are resonant from your work that I think we should talk about. I've had people say, wow, you actually read my book, which I was kind of insulted. I'm like, I'm not Stephen Colbert. I'm not one of these like professional. It's not the ladies of the View where they have you on and they haven't. You can tell they haven't read the book. They gave it to an intern who gave it to an intern who gave it to an intern who used ChatGPT to come up with a bunch of bullets. Right? Like as a host, where it behooves us to actually read the crap.
If you have time, I haven't always had time to finish the book.
Very, very true. That's where things like Google Notebook and Gemini come in, where you can upload a copy and parse it. But for us, that was some of our lag time in between episodes. Is Cliff Berg said, I get a copy of Agile 2. And that was 300 something pages. It was not easy to get through, but I read through the whole thing. So I was prepared. So make sure you tell the host of things that you want to hit on. Right. Yeah. I think that's big. The other hint I give people is be prepared to be surprised. Sometimes conversations take a wild turn, and there may be something where you introduce a topic and then it goes into something tangential, then it keeps going. Which is, I honestly think those are the best podcasts. Like
Yeah.
where there are certain music podcasts, I will not impugn the guilty, where they ask the same 10 questions every time, and it's
Well,
exhausting.
Tim Ferriss does that too. He always
Yeah,
asks the same questions.
true. Tim Ferriss does it. There was somebody else. Who is it? Sean Ryan asks a lot of
Okay.
the same questions, and for some people it works, but for other people it's like, oh, now we're going to get to the point where he's going to ask about what kind of music was in your house when you were growing
Yeah.
up, and it's terrible. Dave, what suggestions would you give somebody if they're
So
gearing up to go on a show?
I like that you said notes, because I always ask people, like, where do you want to end? Like, what's the thing you want to leave them with? But I like to say, like, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. And at the end, I'll ask you for your contact information. And in the middle, like, if they have something they need to get across, like, we'll go to that. But generally, I just want to see what happens. So I did one earlier this week. It was a subject I didn't know anything about. So I'm like, I'm going to just play myself, which is usually me. It's just me selfishly asking questions. Sometimes, like in the last David Marquet interview, I said, I really would love for you to tell the story about, put it into whatever gear you told them to put the submarine in, and it didn't have the gear, and nobody would tell you that it didn't have the gear. Because I love that story, and I tell it in every class. And people are usually pretty accommodating. But for me, the whole joy of it is I just want there to be a conversation. And I think
Right.
one of the things that I do that I don't know anybody else who does this, because it's kind of stupid, is I want, like, if you're a new guest, I want you to feel totally safe. So I always say to people, I'm going to edit it and I'm going to send it to you to listen to. And I'm not going to post it until you tell me it's okay. Because since I don't want to do a ton of prep and I just want it to go where it goes, I want them to feel like they're not going to expose themselves. And I think only twice have there been things that came out that were so bad that they couldn't be used. Maybe 3
Mm,
times.
mm.
But it's pretty rare, I think.
I think you're right. I think most people at least have, if you get them in a space where they're comfortable. So
Yeah.
let's specifically talk about an author, right? If you've just churned out a book, we used to have people on the Agile Uprising where they'd never done an interview before, because we were so far
I
down
just
the
had
rabbit
that
hole
this week. Yeah.
and picking up all these different books that, occasionally you do get someone who's never done this sort of thing, and to be truthful, Dave, we got to give them a little bit of grace.
Oh yeah, it's scary.
I'm going to give a public shout out to Karen Martin.
Okay.
She was the first interview I ever did solo for her book Value Stream Mapping.
Okay.
And she was a hell of a trooper, because it had to come through that I was completely nervous. But she was a professional and we had a great conversation. Ended up being one of the better interviews I've done, kind of funnily. There is something to be said about giving the host grace, but also be prepared to be surprised, because
Yeah.
something will inevitably happen.
And it's a podcast. It's not like people are going to, and
Right.
you're not Joe Rogan. It's not like it's going to go viral and people are
Right.
going to come back a billion times to watch it over and over again.
Right.
Okay. So I don't really know if I have any please don'ts for that, other than try to not be the ones that, to me, that go the worst are the people that are so nervous and they're overthinking it so much that they're constantly like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. That was really stupid. I shouldn't have said that. Oh my God, I'm stammering too much. You got to shut that off somehow.
So as hosts, I mean, I always made jokes. I kept it light. Like
Yeah.
I do curse and swear sometimes. That's also a
Wait,
challenge
say
for the
that
host.
again. I didn't handle that properly. Please say that again. Say it
curse
again.
and swear sometimes.
What the
Yeah, right. And it's up for us, the host, to, you got to make people comfortable, right? Let's make a joke about it. We had one guy on once who, to your example before, he stammered through an answer and then he froze, and we weren't sure if the connection dropped out.
Yeah.
And then he said, "Hey, I want to re-answer that question,"
which is exactly what you should do.
Okay,
cut that. Yeah, it's
sure,
easy.
Sure. Pause the recording, restart. Now you got two pipes. You can slice it. It's easy. That's fine, right?
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to, as for listeners that are going to be guests, don't be afraid to say, hey, you know what? Re-ask that question for me. I want to do a take 2 because I just thought about it. I have a better answer. Okay, works for me.
Yeah.
Right? It works for me. I'm just handing you a microphone. I do think when it comes to don'ts, don't do this. It really falls into the technical side of it, right?
Well, hold on. You've already jumped to the third topic, and now you're...
Is that really the third topic?
You were already in the speak gooder topic, and now you're going back to technical. We're going to go on to the second topic, which is technical setup. So
fair.
people are like, what should I have? What should I not have? What is your preference for how people are set up technically?
So if this is the first time you're doing an interview, or you do them infrequently, I can see someone not having a full setup. So before we started recording, you and I were talking about, we've got full audio rigs. You've got MDR V60s on. I've got Audio Technicas. I've got a
Both
mic.
have cables, please note.
Yes, both have cables. Bluetooth is for the birds, but we'll talk about that later. There are some people that can do a whole interview using AirPods, but the fidelity is typically bad. The volume is typically bad. I got to do all sorts of stuff on the front, on the back end, messing with the volume.
Hey,
so
Bluetooth worked fine. It's not a problem.
Right. Now you want to be in a quiet space, right? I'm going to give. So here's a funny anecdote about the Agile Uprising. We had a conversation scheduled with Dave Snowden. I love Dave. Dave is a great interview because all you got to do is throw 2 or 3 things out there, and he's after it.
Those are cookies. That's the cookies.
Oh, okay. He's great. But Dave, to his credit, said, "Hey, I'm in a cab in Sydney right now. I'm willing to talk to you if you guys want to talk." And we said, "No, Dave, you're in a cab in Sydney. Go do your thing."
Yeah.
Now, first of all, kudos to him for he apologized, like, "Okay, I'll set it up for you." We had a different conversation under a different time. But you don't want to be taking an interview in the middle of Times Square, especially if it's your first time doing it, you're not comfortable doing it, and you're worried about how you're going to come across. You need to set yourself up for success.
Yeah. A quiet space where you can, well, it doesn't even have to be, I don't think it even has to be quiet. It has to be a place where you can be present.
Yes. Minimal distractions, right? And I know I'm talking to you, and each one of us has probably multiple monitors sitting in front of us, but you need to be able to focus.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're going to get bad
Put on
answers.
your do not disturb. Because that's always difficult when somebody's phone bings and then they. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Or it starts clipping. Yes.
But you said on the headphone side, like I would love for them to have a microphone, but that's not the biggest deal. A laptop mic to me is okay, but a wired headset is really important because Bluetooth creates all kinds of problems. Especially if you're doing something like, Zoom, where there's often a lag issue anyway. Bluetooth just makes it 10 times worse.
Right.
So try to have headphones on. If you don't have headphones on, try not to schedule the podcast interview while someone's mowing your lawn.
I've done that. I've had that happen to me. I interviewed a musician once, Dave, where I'm not gonna narc out the musician, but at one point, me and my co-host hear this weird resonant like clanking in the background, and we let it go on for like 2 minutes, and then finally Tim says to the guy, my co-host Tim says, "Hey, Dave, what's going on there?" And Dave literally says, totally straight face, "Yeah, I'm sorry, man, I'm doing dishes." Which we turned it into some podcast art. Like that was the cover of the episode, was a sink full of dirty dishes. And we had a good laugh about it, but please, especially if you're nervous, please get somewhere quiet. I'm not telling you need to go to a library, but go somewhere where, to your point, you can be present.
Yeah. And I don't have any guidance on lighting or cameras because, I've been doing this for almost 20 years and I still suck at lighting. And my cameras are never great, but that to me isn't the biggest. I think people are kind of forgiving about that.
Very, very much so. Very much so. We've gone from podcasts being audio only to podcasts being audio and video. I'm sorry, beggars don't get to be choosy.
Sorry. Right. Let's see. Topic 3, speak gooder. So we've already talked about, I feel like if they have vocal thinking sounds, stammering a little bit, like that's how people talk. So I'm not going to cut all of it out. But if you're somebody who cannot get through more than 2 or 3 words without making those sounds, that could be problematic.
Yes. I just did it. One thing to think of is,
but it sounded natural when you just did it.
True. I didn't. The advice I give people. So I am naturally hyperactive. I am naturally quite, being Italian and from New Jersey, there's a lot of gesticulating going on this end of the mic of the camera. I think I tell people deep breaths.
I like how it was from New Jersey. Like that's a different kind of Italian.
It is like we have weird words like what is it, regatta or the gabagool. The gabagool, right? It's Sopranos. It doesn't exist anywhere else, that word. But I tell people sit straight up. Put your feet equal on the floor. When I need to focus, I'm sitting straight up. My feet are equal flat on the floor, and I'm trying to pay attention. Now, some people will, to your point, Dave, will They'll go too far,
Yeah.
and they get so concerned about their breath and how they're speaking
Or they
that they
forget to
end up
breathe. Yeah.
sounding like Walter Cronkite on Quaaludes, and that's not good either. So, and remember, if you, like me, if you're just naturally a fast talker, if you are naturally someone who's excitable, if you're naturally someone who's a little bit more laconic and slow, that's okay.
Yeah. Just be
The
yourself.
audience doesn't care. They just want to hear you be you. And when you start to try and correct to play to the audience and think you try to be someone that you think people want to hear, you end up sounding worse, and you have a bad go at it.
The only thing I have done it where I've stopped and told people they needed to amp it up a little bit or tone it down a little bit. If they seem like they just did like a whole bag of crack, I might be like, "Hey, can you
Yeah.
slow down?"
See, I've never had that, but I have had the opposite where
They seem
my
like they're
co-host and I
medicated the other way.
interviewed, it was two brothers. They were brothers who were guitarists, and it's extreme music, so nobody's gonna name this band, but they had no camera, so it was audio only. And they must have been like sharing a cell phone sitting in between the two of them. And it was god awful because there were these terrible fits and starts, and they were twins. So the voice differential of timbre and tone really wasn't,
You
unless you were
couldn't
looking
even
at them, you didn't
tell?
know who
Yeah.
it was. So it made it really uncomfortable for us, really
Okay.
uncomfortable. And we ended up releasing it, but it was not one of our better shows. Put it that
Okay.
way.
Well, if it's camera, where do you want them to look?
Uh, you
'Cause
can look at you can look at the screen, you can look at the camera.
I have a lot of ones where if I'm looking at you, I'd be talking like this the whole time, which I guess is okay, but it seems to me better if I look at the camera.
Yes, I speaking of work, I have colleagues who use, for whatever reason, I guess they're poor, and they use the laptop camera, even though our company gives us money to buy an actual camera. So they're literally having the whole conversation like this.
Yeah.
And remote work is hard enough without being able to see someone in person. By the way, whoever's watched the video, the camera adds 48 pounds to me, and I'm sticking by it. But it's hard enough to create that rapport when you have someone who's literally looking 45 degrees in the other direction.
Yeah.
I tell people, again, be natural. So if you looking at me is going to make you uncomfortable, I mean, I'm pretty sure I can interview Dustin Hoffman in Rain Man with him looking straight down the whole time and still turn it into an interview as long as you get him going.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
some people, it's tough. It's tough. I get it. I get it.
So what you just said, I think, is really important. Like the person who's interviewing you wants you to shine. They want you to look good. And one of the things that I feel like I struggle with is like I'll be interviewing somebody and I always say like, here's a cookie. And I throw the cookie and they smack it onto the ground. And I'm like, here's another cookie. And they smack. And I'm just like trying to toss stuff at you that you could like run with and go, you know, on a tear down some rabbit hole that we can explore for 15 minutes. But that's why I don't like having the questions ahead of time, because people have these scripted answers and then they can't riff, they can't think on the fly. I mean,
Right.
some people that's like creates total panic, but I want to get to know them. I want to explore things with them. Like to me, it's like playing jazz. Like it's
Mhm.
finding a sound that we can make together, and there's interplay and we have to go back and forth. And if you're just playing off sheet music, we can't do
There's
anything.
no improv.
Yeah.
The best podcasts sound like two people sitting in a bar having a beer and a conversation. Those are the best podcasts. And you're
Yeah.
right. I am very much on the fence with giving agenda ahead of time. There are some people I send it to because I know they may want to not tightly control the conversation, but for their own calmness, for their own pace, to put their mind at ease. I'll say, hey, look, here's some of the things I want to talk about. And I have had a guest get the list of questions and say, I'd actually like to pass on this interview. No, thank you. These are things I don't want to talk about. It's not for
Oh,
me.
wow.
And as a host, I went, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Well,
Fine.
I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to say, well, what would you have me do differently? Because that's not my place. If you're not comfortable, call the audible and
Well,
we'll move on to something
and
else.
if you're in the middle of the interview and the person asks you a question you don't want to answer, just say, I don't want to answer that question. Or
Absolutely. And
could you
then
ask
as a
it
host,
differently? Yeah.
yeah, move
Fine.
it along. To your point, Dave, I think it goes back to, we both want to be successful. We want you to look good, and we want to turn out a pretty decent show. So it's not in my best interest to go after, I'm not going to pull up TMZ and start going after all the recent shit you got going on in your life. That's not a good look.
The agile TMZ.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like I heard you did this at the conference. Like, that's not a good look. Yeah,
Yeah.
we both want to be successful, and assuming the positive intent from the host, and on the host seat, assuming the positive intent from the guest, you could probably get somewhere. Some people this doesn't come naturally to.
Yeah. Okay.
You're right about the cookie though. There are some times where it would be like interviewing. Here we go. This is nerd lore here. It would be like interviewing Don Reinertson, right? The principles
Yeah.
of product development flow, and never bringing up flow. Or you bring up flow and he wants to talk about his mom's lasagna recipe, right? Like, okay, though, that's your right as a guest. And if you want to talk lasagna, again, I'm Italian from New Jersey, we'll talk lasagna. But
Yeah.
when you throw these things to the guest to say, hey, here's some chum. I'm putting it in the water.
Yeah.
Let's go after it. And then they're either nervous or not paying attention. They go in a different direction. You're like,
Yeah. So it would be like if somebody
okay.
was like, so tell me, what was it like growing up in New Jersey? How was it? And you're like, it was fine.
The one word answers, the monosyllabic, those people, no offense to them, but you should know yourself. And as a guest, if that's how you typically interact when you get nervous or when you're in a room you're not a cocktail party person,
Yeah.
don't accept the invite. Don't.
Yeah.
Do yourself the favor.
You don't
do me
have
the
to
favor.
do it.
No, because you're going to come away aggravated and disappointed with yourself and with me. And I'm going to come away a little disappointed. And yeah, well, how are things? Fine. It's like talking to my wife when she's mad. It's like, I'm not going to get anywhere.
Fine.
I'm not going to get
Yeah.
anywhere. What's wrong? Nothing. Well, that nothing has a lot of things wrong in that nothing, but
What about alcohol? So you mentioned that a minute ago. I've had a lot of people like, hey, we should get loaded and do a podcast.
so true. I don't think I've ever done an agile one. Well, we've done like roundtables, like we've done a roundtable amongst the Agile Uprising board members, and we've definitely tied one on. I may or may not have seen James Gifford fall over in a chair and have a train set drop
I
on
can't
his head.
believe that would happen.
Yeah, what I was so outside his normal, shocked at that behavior. I don't really do it with the agile type stuff because I don't know if I can get away with it.
Okay.
And also I don't need to be lubed up with a couple of beers. The music stuff I do, oh, absolutely. There have been times I got, one eye open and, the running joke is my co-host and I, we do reaction vids. We'll react to other bands' videos and we'll do like 6 or 7 in a clip and we're drinking the whole time. So, but we release them out of sequence. So we literally look like a clock because there's one episode where I'm like this. There's another episode where I'm like this and I'm talking from off screen and you can't tell.
Yeah.
If anybody is one of those people who thinks, oh, I'm nervous, I should do a shot of vodka. I'm going to tell you, don't.
Right.
Oh, I'm nervous. Maybe if I take this edible. No, don't. You're better off going in clear-minded and from studio trickery, production tricks, we can get away with a little bit more on that side. I would not suggesting getting bombed unless the whole point is literally you're coming on the Drunken PM podcast and
which is not even about drinking. It's a Jackie Chan riff.
Show up drunk and let's see what happens, which you should try
awful.
once, Dave. We'd probably get some
I did one podcast with people and they were all lit and I wasn't, and it was awful because they thought they were really funny.
And then you sobered up and went,
no, I was sober the whole time. I'm like, this isn't funny at all. This is just dumb. It's not entertaining. It's just like, it was torturous.
I guess, well, we could really go down that rabbit hole. Does it depend on what kind of drunk you are? Yeah. Right? Like, because there are some people who get funnier. There are some people who get mean. There are some people who just fall asleep. I get louder and louder and louder and louder, and then I just go to sleep, and that's the end of it. But yeah, I would not suggest any pharmacological benefits to trying to mellow yourself out. You are much better off going in clear-minded and giving it a go than trying to do it. You're not putting your best self forward, right? Yeah. And you run the risk of really creating an issue. I've never had a guest though ask me, "Hey, can I do some bong hits before I show up on the show?"
During the podcast?
I would probably tell them, yeah, I don't really care. Like, what state are you in? Oh, it's legal there. You're good. Yeah. It sounds like a bubbler in the background.
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't suggest it, but I mean, maybe if you need that to lighten up, I don't know. I mean, if we're talking agile shit, right? Like I'm trying to imagine we had not even Dave Stoner, like we had Dean Lithingwell on a couple times. So there were a couple of safe updates.
Dean is the longest interview I did. We were at 2.5 hours and I ran out of hard drive space. I was like, Dean, we can't do, I had to stop. It was amazing though. It was one of my favorite interviews.
He's a good interview. He's a good interview and he enjoys talking.
Yeah.
And when it was like safe, I don't know, 4.2 or whatever, we had him on and we sent him beforehand the list of questions and we cleared a good 80% of them in the time box we had. And that's how I think you've done a good job as a podcaster because we turned the recording off and he said, "Hey, I want to thank you guys. I had a really good time."
Yeah.
And I knew that you knew my stuff because I looked at your questions and you'd obviously been through it enough that he said, you weren't asking me questions about the big picture and SPC class, which is, he said, what I get a lot of interviews about.
Yeah.
You actually are practitioners in the weeds asking me questions that if I get stopped by some other practitioner at a
Which
conference.
is fun for him too, right?
Yes. I mean, that's what they want to talk
Yeah.
about. I mean, Dave, I did a music interview once with this one lead singer of this band. They're on their way up. It's extreme metal. They had a new album coming out. And, you've been in the music industry, right? Like, nobody wants to have the interview where it's, tell me about the album, tell me about the title, where did the lyrics come from? They'd rather eat a shotgun, right? We had one guy come on. Within 45 seconds, we pivoted the entire conversation. We did an hour about Soundgarden and Super Unknown and how amazing that album was. And we literally just went in a different direction.
And that's fun, because that's actually a candid conversation with somebody who's an artist.
At the end, he said, this was awesome. I thought you were going to ask me questions about lyrics and production and what was recording like. And we talked about one of my favorite albums. And that's the stuff that as an interview I love. When you find that
make it fun for them too.
When you find that one thing that someone's passionate about, that they enjoy talking about, that they get energy from it, and then you can interact with them and you have just enough shared to get the conversation going. I mean, shout out to Agile Specific. Shout out to Jorgen Hesselberg, the author of Unlocking Agility, Comparative Agility, right?
Yeah.
First time I met him was at the conference. I interviewed him years ago. That was the first time I ever met him.
Okay.
And I had Jorgen on. It had to be like, I think he's in Norway. It had to be like 3 a.m. his time. And we went for an hour and a half.
He's great though. He's so
internet
easy
cut
to
out.
interview.
I called back in. He was still on, and we went another half hour. Yeah, if you get someone but he was passionate, he was excited,
and he's super chill too.
Yeah, and I just started asking questions like, Jorgen, this wasn't on the agenda, but I want to ask about this page in the book because I'm not sure about this. We had a great conversation. So I guess the other thing about how to be a good guest would be also know your own stuff, right? You're not gonna, if you're going to show up about a book that you did years ago, that's fine, but at least take a refresher and know what's coming. You just have an idea where we may go down some rabbit hole. And again, to your point, if you say, oh, I really don't feel like answering that right now, it's not really where my mind is. Okay.
Yeah. I
think somewhere else.
It's important if they're nervous too to let the host know, because like I'll treat certain people differently if I know that they're kind of, you have to be a little more careful with them, kind of ease into it a bit.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, communicate. Let somebody know. Like I did an interview with an author where he had a really shitty day, and we signed on, and I looked at him. I said, "Are you okay?" And he went, "Actually, no, man, I'm not. I had a rough day. I had this, and this happened." And I said, "Well, what are we doing this for?"
Do it when it works for them.
Yeah, like, well, let's reschedule it because I want you to put your best foot forward. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to give you a bad experience. You're like, I don't ever want to talk to those guys again because it was a terrible conversation. And funnily enough, he actually said to me, "No, I think I need this to turn my day around. Can we just keep going?" And I said, "Look, we'll go a half hour. If you feel good, we'll go another 20 minutes. If you don't like it, we'll just bag it." We ended up going over an hour.
That's awesome.
Because he said,
wow.
Thank you, because I needed this conversation. And as a host, like, if your guest isn't there and you can see it, call the audible, man. Don't make anybody suffer through it, because then you're all going to.
And don't force people to do interviews either. That never works out.
Yes, there are people that I have.
I've coerced.
Can't chase them, but and you're going to get declined, right? There was a guy I tried to get on about throughput accounting who wrote this amazing book, and he's like, I don't do this stuff. And I went, okay, well, if you ever change your mind, here's my email. I appreciate it. Agile, Dave Thomas, right? Dave Thomas doesn't talk about any of this stuff. He's said famously, I've left that behind. That's a different part of my life right now. I don't want to go back. Yeah. Okay. No, don't blame me for trying, please. No harm, no foul. Good luck in everything you do go forward.
Yeah. All right. Last question.
Okay.
And this is just to make everybody else feel a little bit better when they feel uncomfortable. What is the most embarrassing thing that you have done on a podcast?
Most embarrassing thing.
The one where you were like filled with shame and self-hatred.
Within the first 30 seconds, I called the guest the wrong name. Wow. I did that once. The guy's name, and I am going to call him out because he's the greatest dude. It was Lance Collier from the band Down the Sun. They were a late third generation new metal band. They signed to the Slipknot's boutique label, and his nickname is Kook.
Okay.
So for some reason, I thought his name was Luke. And I introduce him as Luke Collier from the band Down the Sun. And he
Wow.
goes, "My name is Lance." And I start laughing. And he started laughing. He made a joke about it. And it was, but I wanted to crawl into my own skin. Probably that's the most embarrassing thing I've ever done as a host. I butchered Joshua Karyevsky's name. And I mean,
I
his
butcher
name,
people's last names all the time.
which is, it became like a running joke on the Agile Uprising. Like,
What'd
hey,
you
come on
call
the
him?
show. And Dave, I don't even know, because I could say it right now with my eyes closed, and I could spell it. I could spell it backwards. I mean, for whatever reason, he came on and I basically said, I forget what I said. Ryan Lockhart was with me. And he just went, like, I watched Gifford butcher the Pop and Dick's last names. Like that's probably the one time I've wanted to crawl out of my skin, is I started off by butchering
All
someone's
right.
name.
I'm going to tell you a story then. So this was a long time ago. I was going to interview Jeff Sutherland. I was working in California and he was in Paris. And so to interview him, I had to get up at like 4:30 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And back then it was just Skype and a headset. Like that's what you used, right? So I'm in California, get up. It's like, I just turn the computer on. I dial in, I hit record. He gets on. He goes, "Why are you in your underwear?" It was meant to be an audio only interview. I forgot that the camera was on, and I hadn't gotten dressed. And I just wish I'd had the presence of mind to look up and be like, "Why aren't you?"
Yeah, the best jokes always come to you later. 15
that
minutes
was,
later.
that was. I've had a number of embarrassing run-ins with Jeff Sutherland, but I think that was the most extreme.
Well, now it's become a bit with you, Dave. Right? Like if you don't embarrass yourself, you won't expect it. Let me turn that question 180 degrees for all the people who are going to be guests on an interview.
Yeah.
What's the worst thing you've ever had a guest do to you? What created the worst experience you've ever had interviewing somebody?
It's not what they did during the interview. It's what happened afterwards. So
Okay.
I mentioned there were a couple that I couldn't use, right? And there was one particular person who I was kind of pushed into interviewing. It was really to promote something they were doing. And it took a long time to get them scheduled. They kept moving it. We finally did it. And they were not organized and they were not like really totally present. So it was like an hour, maybe a 90-minute interview. I spent probably 8 hours editing it. And I finally got it to a workable state and I sent it to them, and I had already promised not to post it until they got back to me. Never got back to me. Wrote to them like 6 or 7 times, just totally. And I spent like a whole day making the thing. Like to me, that's the worst thing, because I will put the time in to try to make you look good no matter what. But when you can't even bother to get back to me, that's just mean.
It's unacceptable. I think for me, it was, so again, I'm going to say that, when we were doing the show, we did a lot of work to prep it. As an example, this is a copy of,
other than your
Native
manifesto interviews, your Taylor interview, your Taylor conversation was my favorite one that you
Oh,
guys did.
thank you. I love that. We got another one coming up on another guy who was Taylor's, he was Taylor's unindicted co-conspirator from France who did management at the leadership level. We're going through a lot of that old stuff. So this is my copy of Cloud Native Transformation Patterns, right? This is Penny Resnick, Jamie Dobson. And I show this this is the homework I did, right? So these are all notes I made, highlights, whatever. So I'm putting my work in here, right? I'm not coming in and say, hey, what about your book? I'm going to go into the weeds. I interviewed someone who's looked at as a thought leader in our space. He has a lot of notoriety. His concept, he wrote a book. It is Reach Escape Velocity. If I mention it, you'd know exactly who it is. He was quite obviously multitasking through my interview.
That's hard.
And he's standing there in this big office, and I'm watching him look at the other screen, and he would only look at the screen that I'm on, that where he's looking at me where the camera is, only to answer questions. Now, he wasn't giving me monosyllabic answers, so he at least his brain works.
He's not really there.
But I knew it was awful. And I've actually run into him at a conference, and I said hi, and I shook his hand and whatever, but I didn't bring that up again, because if I see you again at happy hour, if I've had a couple vodkas, maybe we'll have a different conversation. But I was so, again, I know this is podcasting, it's free. I'm nobody, right? In the greatest scheme of things, I am a nobody. But if some random person called me up and said, hey, can I get an hour of your time to talk about, I don't know, Agile shit, I would give them my uninterrupted attention.
Well, they're promoting you. I mean, they're there for you.
I'm giving you free PR. And this guy was that was probably the worst experience. The funniest, we had on my other musical show, we had a guest on, and my co-host said something and it tipped the guy over, and the guy got combative. And
Yeah.
they had a healthy debate, right? A healthy debate. They weren't calling each other names. This this music personality, who shall remain nameless, harassed my co-host for a month after the fact, would send him random emails. Look, this is why you're wrong. Look at this band. Look at this song. That's what I was talking about. Like, he wouldn't let it go, which is kind of amusing. But yeah, those are the worst experience I ever has, where I was obviously putting in work to concentrate, to talk to you,
Yeah.
and you were off doing other things. And I think, Dave, if we shared notes about the people we've had on that were great interviews, I
Yeah.
mean, it's Johanna
Well, I
Rothman was a
mean,
great
I've reached out
interview.
to you guys. You've
Yeah,
been like, I just did this person. They were amazing. You should interview them.
yeah. I mean, we probably had a lot of the
Joanna's
same.
spectacular. And
Johanna's awesome.
Joanna's somebody who I think is a good example because of what you just said. I have had a number of times with interviews with her, and I've had it with Esther as well, where it gets a little tight. Like you're poking each other. It's a little snippy,
Mhm.
but not in a mean way and not in like a hurtful way. It's just you're passionate and you know you're both passionate and you go. And it's a great debate. I think I like when
Yeah,
that happens.
yeah. I mean, she was great to have on. I loved Jurgen. I had a great conversation with was it David Bishop? So he wrote Meta Agility, which is all
I don't
about
know.
he conceptually. This, you want to talk about something weird in the agile space that never got any love? He talked about hardware, software, middleware, firmware,
Okay.
and how all three of those can work in an agile world. And it was very, very interesting. He was a fun conversation. Dave Snowden. Dave Snowden's great. You can call Dave up and say, Dave, can I just get 45 minutes of your time? I want to poke at this thing. And we had him on to poke at things like spiral dynamics and integral theory and holacracy and why don't they work in real life.
Right.
And Dave, the consummate professional that he is, I have a bit of a Snowden crush, obviously. He offered criticism in a way that wasn't obnoxious or biting. It was truly, I'm picking apart not you, but your ideas. So it
Yeah. Yeah.
wasn't ad hominem, and he was great. But there are some people that naturally you just stick a microphone in front of them. And Dave, you and I are probably two of them. You stick a microphone in front of them, ask them a couple questions, and get them going,
Yeah.
and
Blah, blah,
they'll
blah,
let
blah,
it,
blah. Yeah.
yeah, they'll let it take off and go about itself. But yeah, that was bad experiences. Yeah, someone who doesn't like the post interview. I can't believe you got ghosted. What's worse, getting ghosted or having someone half-ass pay attention? I don't know. I think the ghosting is
Or
worse.
not show up.
Haven't had that with the agile world. Have had
Or
that in the music
cancel
world.
like 5 minutes before. Yeah, that's tough.
I'm
I
gonna
want
call
to
the
say
dude.
one thing
I'm
about
gonna
the
call him
book
out.
thing.
Edsel Dope from the band Dope, who's now the quote unquote unnamed singer for Static X. We booked this guy twice, and both times he ghosted us. So
That's not
I
cool.
wish you the best of luck. I wish you the best of luck. We all know you're the guy singing for Static X. Stop lying. Go on, Dave. I cut you off.
So if you have, so Ross Berman is somebody I'm friends with.
Okay.
I worked with him before. He wrote a book and I meant to read it and I did not have time. And he asked me if I had time and I said no. And he sent me out of ChatGPT or whatever, like the summary, podcast questions, like the whole outline of everything
Mhm.
all boiled down so I could prep and give a decent interview. And when Stuart and I got our book together, we did that too. We sent that out to people because I think if they have read the thing, awesome. If they put in the time that you have, awesome. But if not, at least you're showing them like I care about you looking good too. Let's make each other look good. It's not a
Right.
bad thing to do.
Right. And your ChatGPT point is spot on. Like nowadays you have tools like Google Notebook. When they rolled that out, it was a game changer. But you can take an EPUB copy. Well, you can't take an EPUB, you got to convert it to a PDF. But you can upload it and say, hey, help me. If I'm going to interview the author of this book,
Yeah.
you can actually give it the prompt and say, what questions would I ask? It'll do the legwork for you. Now, granted, it's going to be kind of
You're still going to have to work on
mid.
the
Yeah,
questions, but
but at
it
least
gives you a starting
you
point.
get enough. Like if you're
Yeah.
again, we're back to the whole ladies of the view who don't have time to read the book. You feed it to an AI engine, and it'll give you at least something you could talk
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So if people want to get in touch with you to find out about the bands in your music podcast, most of whom I've never heard of, or or try to coerce you into doing more Uprising podcasts, what's the best way for them to track you down?
So Uprising stuff, you can find me through LinkedIn. We do have an Agile Uprising Discord, which even though the podcasts have tapered off, we have it's actually a quite vibrant community and international, by the way, which always surprises us. So you can find me there. For my music stuff, you'd want to find me on YouTube. I think it's the New Breed NU Breed.
Okay.
You can find us there. Not work appropriate, but that's the other side of my brain, where me and a co-host, we talk to a lot of different people. But yeah, that's how you can find me. We are going to do more Agile Uprising shows. So Dave, you heard it here first. We're going to do a show on Hrcsko File, who was, what's the word? What's the command and control guy we were just talking about?
Taylor.
It was Taylor's contemporary. He was in France. And whereas Taylor was looking at it from the managers and the people down, this guy was looking at it from the top. So how do you structure an organization?
Wow.
Interesting thing I learned, it was originally written in French. I think it was like 1904, 1905. And they translated to America when they realized that this stuff was taking place. However, the interesting thing I picked up is when they translated from French to American, there is no French word for management. So the word that fail, and some French listeners are going to be screaming at his head, at his machine right now because I keep butchering this poor guy's name.
You're from Jersey.
It's true. It's true. We say gabagool. They had no word for management. His word was actually administration.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to confess, I am linguistically pedantic. It causes 99.9% of the problems with my wife when we argue, because she will ask a question. I will decompose the question into words, and I will beat her up about, what does this word mean? What do you mean by this? What do you mean by this?
It's not a good strategy, dude.
No, it's not. It's terrible. I can't turn it off. I'm sleeping on the couch all the time. But I think, back to my point, there is a difference. It's a minor semantic difference between the idea of administering something and managing something. And I wonder, we did an episode on Taylor. We did an episode on Winston Royce's paper around the origin of the waterfall method, where everybody forgets the whole bottom part of the waterfall where he drew the feedback loops.
Yeah.
So this guy, I'm sure, I'm halfway through and I'm like, hey, he's kind of onto something.
Yeah.
But we are going to do an episode on that. We're going to do an episode on, we're actually discussing behind the scenes, pivoting the Agile Uprising, right? Agile has done its thing. 3 years late. I've been yelling about this for 3 years. But we're talking about, what do we rebrand and where does that go? Because it's truly around.
You got to call it AI something.
Yeah, right. Work that into the title. But we've grown past that moniker.
Yeah.
And that moniker, I mean, sadly, becomes almost an albatross at a certain point. There's another reference that kids are not going to get because they don't force kids to read in school anymore. Whatever. But it becomes like a weight.
I've never read Moby Dick.
It's not Moby Dick. It's the Rime of the Ancient Mariner.
That was Moby Dick. No, the whale in Moby Dick.
Yeah, the
whale albatross around his neck in Moby Dick.
See, every time, Dave, you get me on, and I start yammering about all this weird shit, and you're like, where does this guy, Antonio Graham's side?
Well, I still didn't even get to make my comment about the French guy. So I was going to say, I wonder if there's what the relationship is between Karol Adamiecki, who created the harmonogram, which was before the Gantt chart and better than the Gantt chart, but he only spoke Russian, and I think he lived in Poland, so nobody used it, and Henry Gantt,
Yeah, I mean, Gantt was the office mate of Taylor at the Department of Labor, Bethlehem Steel. There's so much interesting history. Peter Palczynski, we could do a whole episode on him, the architect behind the... You
know what you should call it? Project Management Nerds. Your podcast.
There's people have a weird aversion to the PM title,
work
and
nerds.
I'm like, work nerds. There
you go.
Work dorks or something. I mean, but Dave, now, I mean, there's a guy, he was the head of the
picked on all our high school teams.
I absolutely was. I mean, I wasn't any skinnier. The guy who he was a Civil War general for the Union, but before that, he was a logistics coordinator for the Northeastern Railroad. He came up with the first example of the org chart.
Wow.
But it's not the pyramid. It looks like mycelium, that fungal connector in forests. Dave, I'll find the link and send it to you. It is really fascinating.
Cool.
This guy created a true, and I tell people, this is a true servant leader org chart.
Wow.
Because at the top is not the leader. You got to invert that pyramid.
Yeah.
Because then your mindset changes from, again, between administer and manage. You're supporting. There's a net of support that's under these people. If you change that, and it's such a simple, kind of silly semantic change, it makes you wonder what mileage you can get out of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to the first episode of Work Nerds.
Coming soon to a podcast near you. Yes, yes.
Thank you very much, Jay. And if you're going to do a podcast interview, don't be scared. We're here to help.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity, Dave. Much appreciated.
Man. Thanks.
If you learn to work the old way, but the new way is what you need, my job